You're utterly incompetent. A woman like you should just be a homemaker. My husband has kept me bound inside the home, saying that. Despite my numerous attempts to prove to him that I am not incompetent, he never listened. I am not a slave. Even as I yelled that, he wouldn't turn around. My name is Sherry. I am a 47-year-old homemaker. My husband, Ted, is 48 and works as an office worker. I got married and had a child right away, and I've been a homemaker protecting our home for 24 years. My husband completely looks down on me as a homemaker, often belittling me, thinking I know nothing about recent news or current trends. When bubble tea was popular, he intentionally bought some from a famous store to flaunt it, showing it off before giving me the last few sips, saying, "You've never tried this, have you?" This is the bubble tea they often feature on TV. "I'll grace you with a little." After I accepted it, he burst into laughter, mocking me. Not only does he mock me, but he also likes to dominate meaninglessly, and his behavior was horrible. "A homemaker should serve me 24 hours a day," he would say nonchalantly. If I dared to talk back, he'd immediately get aggressive. "Looks like you're skipping meals today." Saying that, he showed a mean, sarcastic smile. Living with such a husband, I've never truly felt at peace. It was not just because of his oppressive nature, but also living with my stubborn and harsh father-in-law and spiteful, nasty mother-in-law made it worse. Even when my husband was not at home, my noisy in-laws would harshly criticize me. "What is this gooey mess? Are you planning to feed us this?" He would angrily throw his spoon on the table and complain loudly. "The meal I served yesterday was too hard, and the one before that had no taste." I served almost the same food we eat, but instead of praising the good dishes, they seem to look for things to complain about. My mother-in-law, nitpicking every detail, would point out dirt in places normally not cleaned daily. Once she starts, she doesn't stop. No matter the situation, if things are not done immediately, she will find even more things to point out. So it's crucial to be cautious whenever she is walking around the house. Being treated like a servant by my in-laws and husband seemed to be because I was a homemaker. It was not my choice to settle as a homemaker. I liked French and had worked using it before. So, I tried many times to discuss with my husband about doing a job related to French from home. But each time, the answer was no. I felt imprisoned, as if bound by invisible ropes. Yet, I hadn't left because of our children. Our daughters, cherished by my husband and in-laws from a young age, often had birthday parties thrown for them. That was nice, but I was always busy cooking and cleaning up, missing the moments my daughter blew out her birthday candles. I had always wanted to capture the fleeting moments of my adorable children. Even if not with a camera, then at least in my eyes. As they grew up, such moments were frequent, and often during school ceremonies, where only one parent could attend due to seating arrangements. I was not allowed to go. Eventually, my daughter had a big dream. She secretly shared it with me one night, and it was thrilling to hear. I encouraged her to pursue it. However, my husband crushed her dreams emphatically. If dreaming fed us, I would have done it too. But humans have limits and aptitudes. "You're a woman, right? I'm not saying I'll end my life here." My daughter confronted her father with a strong gaze, seeking understanding for her dreams repeatedly. In fact, our eldest daughter, Julia's sister, had left home for similar reasons and was living abroad. That's why I wanted my husband to understand this time. "Ted, Julia's life is hers. When the day comes for her to leave the nest, let's send her off with a smile." As the argument between them intensified, I added my opinion. Then, my husband vented his frustration, which he couldn't express to our daughter, towards me. Who would listen to a housemaid's opinion in this house? Hearing that, my daughter left the scene visibly disgusted. I followed her to talk more, but the following day, she left home and since then, hasn't returned or contacted us. His inability to control his daughter only increased my husband's irritation. But in a way, I was relieved that I could help her escape from this house. Being dominated by a controlling husband was something I thought should be limited to me alone. The house felt empty without my daughter. But her chasing her dreams and leaving changed the meaning of my presence in this house. I could make a difference being here. Since then, I've been living distinctly different days. To not waste time, I started waking up even earlier. And I could gracefully ignore the nagging of my in-laws and my husband's irritation. One day, my mother-in-law couldn't come down after going upstairs. Although she could climb up, her weak legs made descending difficult. "Sherry, could you help me? I can't come down. I'll be right there." "Just a moment," I replied, but I was in the middle of frying dinner and couldn't leave immediately. However, I made her wait no more than 2 minutes. "Sorry to be late. Now, I'll help you down." As I went upstairs, at the last step, there was a small puddle of water. Since she was sitting, I helped her stand while avoiding the puddle and tried to help her down the stairs. She had had an accident. I supported her down and immediately took her to bathe. But after that, she said nothing, so I decided to keep quiet too. There's a bathroom upstairs, and she's used to it, but given the situation, it was hard to talk to my husband about it, so I kept it to myself. This would later trigger a significant change in our situation. Since then, I started saying I was going shopping and left the house more frequently. My in-laws looked somewhat puzzled by my frequent outings, but said nothing. One day, when I returned from a short outing, I found my father-in-law collapsed in the hallway. Ouch. The old lady wouldn't use the bathroom and had an accident right here, causing me to slip. "What are you talking about? It was you who had the accident right there, wasn't it?" I helped him up, but both his pants and the hallway were wet. So it was unclear who was responsible for what. Just as I thought to discuss this with my husband upon his return, an incident occurred. When my husband came home, he was approached by my mother-in-law, who should have been asleep. I was doing the dishes, so I couldn't hear well, but suddenly my husband came into the kitchen and said, "Why didn't you tell me about Mom's leg?" "Her leg? She said she fell down the stairs, didn't she?" "Because you didn't go up to help her." I thought he was referring to the incident a few days ago. And I explained that I had properly supported and brought her down. However, as my account contradicted what his mother had told him, my husband furiously scolded me. "Liars should leave this house." Hearing that, I felt an icy chill spread through me, an emotion I had never experienced before. I stopped washing the dishes, walked to the entrance, and as my husband had said, I went outside. After confirming that he wasn't following me, I messaged my daughter. I then sat at a window seat in the diner downtown and ordered a coffee, waiting for someone. This person, riding a bicycle, peeked into the diner discreetly from between the plants outside the window. I pretended not to notice, occasionally glancing outside to observe my husband, who was peeking in. After driving me out, I knew my husband had guessed I would come to this diner, as it had happened a few years ago. Assuming I would stay here aimlessly until morning, he would eventually learn that his assumption was baseless. Later, I took a bus to my sister's house, which was about an hour away. My sister, 2 years my senior and divorced, lived with her daughter and had been a great support. Despite the late hour, she welcomed me warmly, and for the first time in a while, I felt free from stress and slept soundly. I stayed at her apartment for a while, taking on all the household chores as a way to avoid being a burden. Every meal, both exclaimed how delicious the food was, which made me happy. During my over 20 years of marriage to my husband, had I ever been praised like that? 3 days after being driven out, I had not received any contact from my husband, which was a relief. I was fully prepared, and wouldn't have regretted it if we never met again. Then, my phone rang. It was from my eagerly awaited daughter. Meeting her in the city, I was surprised by her transformation. She had her long, beautifully dyed hair tied back loosely, wearing a simple suit. Her figure seemed slightly slimmer than when she had left home. We wept with joy at our reunion after 2 years. Mom, today I can finally repay you. First, let's get you some new clothes. She took me to a place she knew, and coordinated an outfit for me. I was amazed at the stranger in the mirror. After that, she took me out for delicious meals and to trendy dessert shops while telling me about her life in France. Big sister is doing well. She wants to see you. Following my advice, my daughter went to live with her sister in France. She was studying fashion while working and had finally seized a big opportunity. I want you to come with me. Actually, I've already rented an apartment for us. Laughing and crying, I nodded in agreement, excited about our new life ahead. Afterward, we headed to a hotel she had booked. It was a suite on the top floor of a luxurious hotel in the city, offering a stunning view of the cityscape. Just then, my phone rang. Enthralled by the lovely hotel, I answered the call in a daze, only to hear my husband's spiteful voice. Hey, are you alive? How's being homeless? Eating grass somewhere? A $2,000 per night luxury hotel is fabulous. What? He had expected that after kicking me out, I would return the following day. He had been hesitant to call, thinking it would be difficult since he had driven me out. Once he did call and found my circumstances strange, he became annoyingly inquisitive. Not wanting to spoil my luxurious hotel experience by listening to his voice for too long, I said I would come the following day and hung up. Dad is as usual, huh? Tomorrow, I'll reveal everything and end it. We laughed loudly together. A life free from blame was comfortable. The following day, as promised, I went to the house where my husband was waiting. Returning after a few days, the house felt dark, damp, and as haunted as a ghost house. I presented my husband with the divorce papers I had prepared. You're handing me this? How high and mighty do you think you've become? I've earned money to support you all. What complaints could you possibly have? You just tied me down so I couldn't move. I didn't hate being a homemaker. I hated being treated like a slave. Reflecting on everything, I continued. I wanted to work from home, but you opposed it. Then I realized, you didn't want a wife who could perfectly manage household tasks. You just wanted a slave you could vent your irritation on. Struck by the core truth, my husband looked at me sharply but refused to acknowledge it. What can you do? You say you worked in French, but that's nothing special. It might be nothing special to you, but it's French that works overseas. Once we divorce, I'm going to France with Julia. Julia. Have you been in contact with her? It seemed that Ted was genuinely surprised to hear her name. Even though I've tried to contact her, she hardly replies. What do you mean you're going to France with her? Just then, our daughter, who had been waiting outside, entered the living room. A long time no see, Dad. It had been years since they last met, and Ted was visibly moved, while Julia remained cool. You laughed off and crushed my dream of working in the fashion industry, didn't you? You wanted me to stay small, small enough to fit in your hand. That's how it felt when you said those words. Julia looked at me and continued. But Mom said the exact opposite. She told me to leave this place and pursue what I wanted to do. She even supported me in that. I spoke up for my daughter. You were against it, but there are plenty of jobs I could do from home using French. While you were at work, I managed the housework and earned money for my daughter. Sending her money all this time. He was dumbstruck by our words, speechless. Thanks to the money Mom sent me over the last 2 years, I was able to progress smoothly and without worry. Now, I can rescue Mom from here. My husband, his forehead slick with a sheen of sweat, managed to say. You've both been deceiving me for 2 years. It wasn't a deception. It was that you wouldn't let us speak. You never listened to anything we had to say, and all you ever did was negate us. At my words, he finally broke down crying. He hit his knees repeatedly with his fists, sobbing. A gesture that seemed like regret for his past actions, but it was too late. Just then, a car stopped outside, and my sister entered with a cheerful greeting. She had come to collect the few belongings I had left in the house. Since my daughter had left home, I had decided to divorce and had been gradually sending my belongings to my sister's place. The last items were a few pieces of clothing and photographs of my daughter's childhood. I decided to leave behind all the wedding photos. As my daughter and I said our farewells to Ted, the in-laws, who seemed to be in the room, called for him. As I greeted my mother-in-law who came out of the room, she seemed not to recognize me. Her behavior was strange. The door to their room was open, so I addressed my father-in-law inside. But he too seemed not to recognize me. Noticing a foul smell inside the room, I realized something was off. But my daughter and sister urged me to leave his house. Later, I received a message that he had submitted the divorce papers. It turned out that the in-laws might have dementia, and he was faced with the choice of either continuing to work while caring for them, or selling the house and putting them in a facility. Ted, approaching 50, complained that moving to an apartment would be tough. But I told him plainly that this was the end he had brought on himself, by treating his wife like a slave and restricting his daughter's life. As for me, I moved to France with my daughter and started a new life abroad. I was finally able to meet and connect with my eldest daughter again. My sister, who had helped me so much, planned to visit us soon with her daughter. Since I am fluent in French, I look forward to showing them around and enjoying our time together.